Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to introduce Lil Anderson, who is zooming in from Australia today, and we're grateful that she's given some of her time to join us today. Lil, it's a beautiful, one of those rare Wellington days. We're in the Amokura room at Te Papa Tongarewa, looking out across the harbour, and it's a beautiful, beautiful day. Really, really wish you were here, but it's so good to see you, albeit virtually. So Lil is going to be presenting around stewarding the Māori Crown relationship into the future. Ladies and gentlemen, ho mai te paki paki.
Tēnā koe hoi piri, e te whare tātou kua hui mai nei tēnā tātou katoa, e te tūngāne e piri. Tēnā koe mō tō mihi ki au I tēnei ata. E hoa e pau, tēnā koe, kei aku rangatira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Mihi mai ki tēnei uri no Panguru, no Te Rārua, no Ngāpuhi, tūturu no Te Nota, no reira e hoa mā tēnā tātou katoa. G'day, and it's really great to join you all this morning. It's really great to hear my national anthem being sung from in the far north. And today I come to you from the Gold Coast, and I begin by acknowledging the Yugambeh people, the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm dwelling, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. That is the mihi mihi here in Australia, and I've had to learn it fairly quickly. So today I wanted to talk to you about stewarding the Māori Crown relationship into the future. One of the gifts of this secondment, I think, apart from living with my mokopuna every day, has been time to think, to get perspective, and to refresh my thinking. So today's conversation is very much along those lines. It's not a conversation I've had in Aotearoa yet, so you are the lucky first to hear some of my, I suppose, reflections. I'm not really an outcomes framework kind of girl. Piri will know that. I'm simply one of those people that likes to get things done. But you would have all seen that they've become a very important driver in the public service, and this goes across both countries. If you look on every agency's website, there is an outcomes framework. Each are different. Each has a Māori Crown aspect to it, and again, each are different. One of the questions I think we've all pondered is really, what are we trying to achieve in the Māori Crown relationship? You'll be pleased to know, given the job I'm in, that I've never wondered about that ever. There's a big focus, I think, in the public service at the moment on outcomes frameworks on the Māori Crown relationship. There's been books and lectures and essays and TV programs and documentaries made about the Māori Crown relationship. And I think one of the things we've missed is the answer has always been right in front of us. We just needed to see what it was. If we're searching for an outcomes framework in the Māori Crown relationship, it was agreed 182 years ago between Crown and Māori. So it now really falls to us to make good on what the treaty is intended to provide. Into the future, I think, as the promises we are making through treaty settlements are realised, our job will be to make sure that it sticks and to create laws and regulations that make sure we never end up in the place that we've been ever again. I mean this in the way that I don't think as a country we get a third chance at fixing the Māori Crown relationship. This is our last chance. I think there's a lot of hope and we are making huge progress. Reflection time has reminded me, I think, how much progress we've made in Aotearoa. But my level of impatience, I think, has also grown since I've been in Australia. So watch the space when I get back in Aotearoa. The outcomes framework, I think, that I wanted to show you today is based on the treaty. If you think about Article 1, it very simply outlines that government would make good laws across Aotearoa. Article 2 talked about Māori having undisturbed possession of their lands, forests and fisheries, and bills talked about a lot of the principles through Te Mana o Te Wai. Māori decision making over the things that are most precious to them. Article 2 guarantees that. Article 3 talks to us about protection and equitable outcomes. So I want you to keep that framing in your mind as we go through our discussion today. I've prepared a bit of a vision statement based on those articles. And this is, if you have an outcomes framework, you have a vision statement, you have a summary statement. So it's a very, very simple summary statement. Māori want to live on their whenua that sustains them. This tells us that the whenua, that the waterways are healthy. They want to live in peace and prosperity. This suggests good education, good health, with the ability to make decisions over the things that affect them and their people. So while the focus, I think, there is on Māori as the treaty partner, remember that this was merely a Māori way of reflecting that they wanted to retain the way of life that existed before colonisation, and that Te Tiriti was seen as a way to enhance this. If you think about that summary statement, I don't think it's at all unreasonable, do you? And I'm sure you can all agree, isn't this the Kiwi dream? It's not just the Māori dream, it's the Kiwi dream. So that was 182 years ago. Let's see how we're tracking, shall we? Let's start with land. If you think about those 3 articles, the first focused on land. We got off to a pretty terrible start. It could have been worse. It couldn't have been worse, I think, for a new partnership. It cost people their lives, their way of life, their social structure, and their language. All but 5% of Māori land was taken at the end of a gun, a sword, a pen, or a gavel. For a long time, we as the government didn't think there was anything to fix. That either reflected, I suppose, that we thought the actions were fair and justified, or that it was so horrible and so hard to imagine that we'd done, that if we just ignored it, it might go away. I think luckily, and with the help of our Māori leaders, our country's embarked on a journey almost 50 years ago now to start to restore the almost 95% of land taken from Māori. While it can never all be returned through the treaty process, one of the many gifts I think Māori have gifted back to Aotearoa is the fact and the recognition that it can never all come back. But while that's true, many cultural and commercial lands are being returned to Māori ownership. You will see much of this land now features in housing partnerships. It features in joint commercial ventures between Māori and the public service. This is at least, I think, starting to rebuild a sense of community that Māori seek, with families living more communally and living on their lands. They're working to enrich their communities on the lands that their ancestors once lived on. It also sees co-governance arrangements. Just ask Bill. Over rivers, there are legal personalities now created for national parks and mountains that reflect the beliefs and aspirations of Māori, that tipuna can never be owned, but only cared for. Much still needs to be done, I think, in this area to ensure that lands and our natural resources are as healthy as they were when they were removed from Māori ownership. There is still much to do, and I think you all appreciate that in the space of partnering with Māori in terms of resource sustainability and accessibility and in relation to lands and waterways, that starts to shift decision making. However, I think in my estimation, it is one of the areas we are making some progress, slowly but moving forward. Peace and prosperity. How lovely would that be? You'll see that many of our agencies and their outcomes frameworks focus in this space. It centres around well-being, the well-being of people, the well-being of the environment, the well-being of our relationships with each other. When you think about some of our social agencies like health, like education, and like MSD, who are looking to reduce Māori unemployment, agencies like HUD and Te Puni Kōkiri, who are looking to provide healthy homes and communities. Then you look to our environmental agencies like MFE, like DOC, like MPI, who are looking to clean up our natural resources and protect our endangered plant and animal life. Then you go to agencies like Te Arawhiti, like MB, like Tourism New Zealand, and a number of others who aim to enhance our relationships with each other in community through either business, culture, or even with other countries. One of the biggest issues I think we've had as a public service has been our attitude forever of we know best and we can fix you and it. Our approach is slowly changing in this space, but it's taking too long. Only in the last few years, I think, have we started to truly understand, and COVID probably was the key realization that we can only achieve peace and prosperity if we know what it looks like for each person, each family, each community, and we must do it with them rather than to them. We're starting to show promise in areas like the care of our children, where devolution is moving into the community rather than being centralised in Wellington. We are caring for natural resources, much like Taumata Arawai, alongside those who have looked after them for hundreds of years, rather than just the span of their public service career. We're investing in Indigenous business because it is what sets us apart from the rest of the world. We now understand that a real Māori housing solution must involve them. We can't keep building one-bedroom houses for Māori families that number 20, and that houses must be built communally and environmentally. However, in some other areas, we're taking too long to learn. We know, for instance, that Māori are getting bowel cancer around the age of 45, if not earlier. But the screening age has only just been lowered and only to 50. So many Māori continue to die at alarming rates. We continue to have our kids fail at school because we're not teaching them right. But now we're starting to understand that learning styles must adapt and curriculum must be relevant. And we now teach our own history and our own language as a priority. So again, we're on a journey, but we need to move faster and we need to be braver. I think you'll all recognise this flag. Self-determination. It's a scary word in some places. Tino rangatiratanga sends shivers up people's spines. It excites me. I think for Māori, this is the most important aspect of our treaty promise, and it applies across our ability to recreate what we had. It's firstly, I think, about cultural well-being. It's about physical, spiritual, and social well-being. It's about our language, it's about our practices, it's about our beliefs, and it's about our values. What I do know is this is one of the keys to achieving the outcomes that we talked about a few slides back. All of the decisions that we in the public service are trying to make for people can only be achieved with community. It's about Māori making decisions about themselves and their families. I like to make decisions about myself and my family. It's not a scary thing. We want to be able to make decisions for our iwi and our tribes, and not the public service deciding how we might fix them. At the very least, I think in this area, we are starting to move towards a place where those crucial decisions are being moved closer to home. But how do we get even closer? How do we even prepare communities who are out of practice in this level of decision making. We cannot simply hand over the reins and think that after 182 years and the amount of change we've gone through, that Māori will be able to pick that up and run with it with little or no resources. You see now there are joint decision-making areas like Taumata Arowai. There are governance boards across the public service that act as auditors over the public service's approach in the care of our children, in corrections, in justice, and in a number of ways at local government level. However, I think for many Māori, it's true that this approach lacks weight. It's merely a bus stop along the way to more decision-making and self-determination. Tamati Kruger, who is a great Tūhoe leader, described the journey for Māori as going from one of dependency, becoming dependent on government, becoming dependent on what government offers, to interdependency, where we would depend on each other, and then to independence. But he was very clear that this was going to take time. So let's just quickly talk about stewardship and what it means in the future. I think stewardship means different things to different people. To me, it simply means to care for and protect. I mean, sure, as public servants, we have to care for legislation, we must steward regulation, we must steward resources, information and data, systems, processes and assets, sure. And when you Google stewardship, that's the sort of definition that comes up. But I think I and many of you probably became a public servant to care for and protect people in place. The stewardship means that it is all of our responsibility to care for and protect this relationship. It's like a sick tree, and I hate using a tree because that makes me sad, but where its roots are under reconstruction. Then the soil needs tending before the branches can grow to allow it to bloom. You can probably tell I'm not a gardener, but I did my best with that. And I think what I'm trying to tell is the story of the Māori Crown relationship. We need to fix it at its very roots. We broke it, and now we have to fix it before we have any chance of it growing. I think the work that we're doing in returning land, bringing about peace and prosperity, and our move towards restoring rangatiratanga to Māori whānau and to Māori communities must continue at pace. In your roles, you will protect the rights and safety of New Zealanders. You make sure that as a public service, we deliver better services. You are lucky in that you do so more than most with a whole of system view, and you touch all elements of government through policy, through standards, through operational delivery, through information, education, enforcement, monitoring and evaluation. What I want you to do, I think, after today's discussion is to move forward from today with this outcomes framework in your mind. I want you to embed it in your mind, and I want you to adopt it as the lens that you use when you look at your future work. I want you to be brave like Bill and Taumata Arowai, to understand that there is a steep learning curve, that we do have to relearn comfort with each other. And that comfort comes from feeling comfortable with language, feeling comfortable that when someone is speaking Māori in and around you, it's not offensive to you. It is simply us acting out our rangatiratanga. I think being comfortable with tikanga and understanding why women sit at the back, and that it is a protection mechanism. Understanding the history of our country, the good, the bad and the ugly, warts and all, to understand what Te Tiriti really means, and to feel comfortable engaging with Māori. I ask you to find the space in the regulatory work that you do and in the agency that you work for to remind others of this outcomes framework, to encourage others to adopt it, to let it guide your judgments, your decisions and your advice, And then I want you to go a step further so that it feels uncomfortable. If you looked at Forbes magazine, and there are a few books coming out of Australia at the moment that talk about it, feeling uncomfortable is the key to success. Feeling uncomfortable tells you you're probably going to do the right thing, but it's hard. Feeling uncomfortable is a key ingredient to improving performance. And I think what I want to leave you with today is the fact that uh, this is a key ingredient for us ensuring that our tree grows big and strong. Nō reira e te whānau, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Really happy now to have a dialogue with you, answer any questions you've got, and I think be able to make you feel at ease about the conversations we're having as a country. Because I know it can be a scary conversation, but I really sense in this room a group of people who are all about learning and change. It's been a really great privilege to talk to you today, so let's have a bit of a chat. Over to you, my friend Piri.
Kia ora. A round of applause, whānau. Thanks, Lil. Look, we've got a couple of questions that's come through on the live Q&A. As regulators, pursuing the fulfilment of duties, the meeting of obligations, and the attainment of standards, how do we think about responsibility and accountability through a Te Ao Māori lens?
That's a great question, and I think it is simply, as we've talked about in our presentation today. You know, we talked earlier about Te Mana o Te Wai principles, which put the water first, and to many that's a very foreign concept. How can people not be first? What I'm asking you to do is put people in place first in the work that you do. Think about the effect of the decisions you're making on people and on place, and make decisions that are the best thing for those two things. It's become ever so clear to me since I moved to Australia that we clutter ourselves as public servants. We clutter ourselves with different legislation, different policy documents, and sometimes we just have to get back to the simplicity of what public service is all about. And I know I've changed some of my decision making since I've been here. And gone back to the roots of caring for people in place. So I suppose it's one of the things I will bring back to Aotearoa, is to strip away the bark of the tree so that you get to the real nub of it. And I do think that we will make better decisions as a public service if we do that.
Great. Just to follow on from that answer, Lil, in preparation for the return of Lil Anderson back to Aotearoa, what do we as senior Māori public servants have to do to prepare to help strip away that bark?
Yeah, look, I think we have to, I think, you know, the number of senior Māori public servants has grown even while I'm over here. And one of my jobs here in Australia is helping the Australian public service to do what we've done. I think one of the things we need to do is think about what the next step is. So we've all gone on this great journey to commit ourselves to learning and being better. How do we put that on wheels? How do we make that even better and faster? How do we make impact in the right areas? I think, Piri, one of the key things for us senior Māori public servants is the ability for us to think and act as one. You know, if there is a discursive message of everyone's doing everything differently across the public service, people get really confused and don't know what the right way is. So one of the things I want to do when I come back is pull us all together. And I want us to have a good wānanga about what it is we're offering to the public service and back to our whānau and communities, and a way that we can do that speaking with one voice.
Fantastic. So, Lil, what examples are there of Māori Crown partnership done well?
Look, there are a few emerging out of Aotearoa. in some really odd spaces. I think, the one that comes to mind has been one in the rebuild of the Manawatu Gorge. Who would have thought that infrastructure and building a bloody road might bring about one of the biggest partnerships that those iwi have ever seen. So being able, I think, to approach partnership in a way that says uh, Māori could challenge the heck out of that road building for 20 years to come through the environment. But through the partnership, they are making those decisions together at a governance table so that they don't have to do that. Think about how much money, time, and pain we are saving people. You think about the holiday, Matariki holiday, that is using absolute Te Ao Māori knowledge to I think share with Aotearoa. That was a clear partnership between a set of scholars who understand the stars far better than me, who shared their knowledge, their time, and history, I think, with us as public servants. And we picked up the challenge and we made something pretty beautiful. It's appearing in lots of different places, and I think what I'm starting to see is they're becoming more and more real. 5 years ago, our idea of a partnership was a contract. 5 years ago, we signed partnership agreements that meant nothing. We just signed them because we thought they were the right thing to do, but we didn't actually do anything that different. Now we're starting to actually walk the talk as a public service and hand over some of that power we so begrudgingly hold on to. And I think we're starting to see some magic appear.
Awesome. Lil, I'm just going to flip to the audience in the room. Are there any questions from the floor? I think everyone must be hungry. It's just about lunchtime.
I always get the pre-lunch slot. What is that?
Hey, Lil, an absolute pleasure. One last question. How's the mokos?
It's lucky actually, because usually they appear on my Zoom meetings. I was on a Zoom meeting with 4 or 5 New Zealand ministers, and my moko took over the entire briefing. I was trying to brief on something very serious, I need to say. And then they start coming on, and then ministers are waving to my mokopuna, and Minister Davis is showing my mokopuna photos of hokianga to remind them where they're from. It's I think, it gives me a very stark reminder about why I do what I do. And so while coming home in March is going to break my heart because I have to leave them behind, I think it's a really big reminder to me about, the stewardship role that I have and that I'm preparing a better country for them to come home to.
Ka pai. Ladies and gentlemen, homai te paki, Lil Anderson.